So it takes the Israelites about 3 months, and they find themselves at the base of Mount Sinai, and they're going to spend a long time here. Even just amount of time that the Old Testament gives us focusing on the Israelites at Mount Sinai is extensive. I mean, the whole book of Deuteronomy is them camped out at the base of Mount Sinai, just to kind of wrap our mind around, like, this is a very significant moment. And what God does here is he's calling them forth as a people. He's setting up a covenant with them, and he's giving them a new mandate, a new identity, which is fascinating. We're going to jump into right now. Exodus 19, 1-9. On exactly the 3rd month anniversary of the Israelites leaving the land of Egypt, they came into the Sinai desert. They traveled from Rephidim, came into the Sinai desert, and set up camp there. Israel camped there in front of the mountain, while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain. This is what you should say to Jacob's household and declare to the Israelites. You saw what I did to the Egyptians, and how I lifted you up on eagle's wings and brought you to me. So now, if you faithfully obey me and stay true to my covenant, you will be my most precious possession out of all the peoples, since the whole earth belongs to me. You will be a kingdom of priests for me and a holy nation. These are the words you should say to the Israelites. So Moses came down, called together the people's elders, and set before them all the words that the Lord had commanded him. The people all responded with one voice, "Everything that the Lord has said, we will do." Moses reported to the Lord what the people said. Then the Lord said to Moses, "I'm about to come to you in a thick cloud, in order that the people will hear me talking with you, so they will always trust you." Moses told the Lord what the people said. So we're jumping forward as we're going into the story of Israel through the wilderness. God has rescued them from slavery in Egypt, and he's turning them into a people that he can use. And this is such a pivotal moment. I find myself going back to this scene again and again to understand the rest of the Bible. So what's going on? It's on the 3rd month of the Israelites leaving the land of Egypt. They're in the Sinai desert, in the wilderness, there at Mount Sinai. And God is coming to the people, and this is the kind of crux of this whole thing. He's creating a covenant. If you faithfully obey me, stay true to my covenant, you will be my most precious possession out of all the peoples, since the whole earth belongs to me. You will be a kingdom of priests for me and a holy nation. So he's setting up this covenant, which is this promise between two groups of people, between God as their king and the people. It's used as the idea of a covenant in the ancient world came up. It's a marriage covenant, which we can understand today. It's also between a king and his subjects. And this kind of covenant happens over and over again. But God is binding himself to this people, and he's expecting them to bind themselves to God. And he wants them to be this precious possession out of all the peoples. But significantly, God is not just the God of Israel. Sometimes that maybe is misconstrued. Sometimes Israel thinks that. Sometimes we as Christians think that, as if God is ours and we have a claim to God. But God says, no, actually the whole earth is mine. So what's our role as his people? Well, it's right here. We are supposed to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. Let's just camp out on that for a little bit, because kingdom of priests is an interesting, maybe a little confusing idea, because in the normal scheme of things, you have the temple in the ancient world. This is where people would go to meet with their god or gods, and you would have a priest presiding, working in that temple. And so the people come to the priest, and through the work of the priest get to commune with God, and then God is also speaking from the priest to the people. So they are the mediators, right? They mediate God's presence to the people coming to the temple to worship. But what happens if the entire kingdom are called priests? Well, they wouldn't have anyone to minister to if it was just about them. So Israel, as God's people, was never set out to be just about herself, right? It's not just about Israel. Israel is supposed to be the priests mediating God to the world. That actually shows up. We already studied this months back in Genesis chapter 12, for instance, where Abraham was given the call to go, and God would make out of Abraham a nation through whom he would bless the entire world. So Israel was always meant to be God's vessel of blessing to the world. We are supposed to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. This looks really great. This is the original mandate. Now, we'll get into this, but obviously they kind of failed at that, just like we all do. And we'll see next week how quickly they failed at that. But this idea still holds true. There's something really powerful to think of ourselves. If we are God's people, we're not supposed to live for ourselves. This is not just about me or my church or God's people being taken care of. Actually, the original mandate is that we are supposed to be priests, mediators, mediating God to the rest of the world and taking the world's prayers and bringing them back before God. We are never meant to live for ourselves as followers of God. So the Lord is really setting out this really powerful image that the whole people of God are being elevated to. There's this sense that Moses is the archetype. He is the mediator of God to the people. God even kind of doubles down on that. It says, I'm about to come to you, Moses, so that they're going to hear me talking with you and they're going to trust you. So Moses becomes kind of the mediator of God to the people. But the people, I guess, ultimately are supposed to get to this place where they can actually mediate God directly to the rest of the world. They're not quite there yet. They're still learning. They're still growing. But just kind of reflecting on that, maybe going back and jumping back into Genesis 12, that original mandate still stands. This is a question that often comes up. Why did God choose Israel? It seems kind of unfair. God, if you're the God of the whole world, why did you choose one nation? I thought you cared about everybody. And this kind of lets us know. The reason why he did that was not because he didn't care about the rest of the world, but because the rest of the world needed a mediator. They needed someone who could bring them into the presence of God, and Israel was supposed to be that mediator, that vessel. The fact that they fail miserably at that maybe is to be expected because we're all human, and we got to get into that. But the idea that the world needs a mediator shines out really clearly in this section here. Well, I love reflecting on that image of priest. And on an individual level, maybe we haven't called it that. Not everyone uses that term priest today, but every one of us who have a relationship with God has needed a priest in our own life. I've needed someone to help mediate God to me, to teach me about God and to connect me in relationship with him. But the next level is that we're supposed to be his priests for the world. We're supposed to bring God's presence to the rest of the world, and vice versa. Mediation goes both ways. We're supposed to take their needs, their prayers, their suffering, and bring it in prayer to God. Is there a way this week that God is inviting you to step into that role of priest, to be his mediator to someone else in your neighborhood, in your family, in your place of work? Is there a way that you can stand in the middle and say, let me help you connect with the God that I know?